proceed, I would like to acknowledge our keynote speaker for today, Dr. Ellen Onyeka, who was scheduled to lead us in this opening reflection. Unfortunately, due to unavoidable circumstances, Dr. Onyeka is unable to join us in person today. However, in our spirit and on behalf of the ITA Food Research Center at the University of Birmingham, I will be delivering the keynote presentation on our behalf. But before we do that, I would like to read Dr. Ellen's biography. So Dr. Ellen is an industrial microbiologist with over 25 years of experience in academia and industry. She lectures in food microbiology, food safety, and also chemical engineering at the University of Birmingham, and supervises PhD and MSc research in industrial microbiology. Her award-winning PhD explored microbial responses to changing environments to improve industrial processes. She's a recipient of the Freedom and the ICAM Awards, and she also delivers CPD training globally. Dr. Ellen enjoys traveling, she enjoys reading, and engaging in charitable activities. So I'm honored to be delivering a keynote titled Promoting Global Food Security and Sustainability. So good morning once again, distinguished colleagues and friends of the planet. Let me begin by returning to something simple, but yet profound, food. And that is why we're all here today. By the way, happy World Food Day. And food is one of the few things that connects every human being. It shapes our childhood memories, it defines our culture, and even sustains our hope. And yet, the irony of our time is that something so essential, so sacred, has become a global crisis. A few years ago, again, during my visit to a small fishing community in Ondo State, Nigeria, I met a young girl named Morenike. She must have been about 10 years old. She was sitting under a mango tree, peeling cassava besides her mother, when I asked what she wanted to be when she grew up. And she said, I would like to be a nurse so that people won't die because they're hungry. Her words really got to me, almost pierced me. And in the moment, I realized that hunger is not just about empty stomach. It is about broken potential. The dreams differ because of lack of nutrition. And according to statistics, the statistics are staggering. And they are more than just numbers. These statistics are also stories. Today, about 783 million people go to bed hungry. That is almost 1 in 10 of us on this shared planet. And over 2.4 billion people are food insecure, meaning that 1/3 of humanity cannot consistently access safe, nutritious food. And while millions starve, 1/3 of all the food produced globally is lost or wasted. And if you pause for a moment, just imagine the contrast. Mountains of food waste in some parts of the world and empty plates in others. Meanwhile, projection shows that by 2050, we will need 70% more food to feed our growing population. This is not just a humanitarian crisis, by the way. It is an economic and ecological reckoning. It calls us to ask, what does development mean if it leaves people hungry and the planet degraded? The first major driver of this crisis, of course, is climate change. Agriculture, ironically, is both a victim and a contributor. It produces about 26% of global greenhouse gas emissions, yet it is the first to suffer from floods, droughts, and heat waves. For every 1 degree Celsius rise in temperature, we lose 3 to 7% of crop yields. Losses now estimated over 100 billion annually. Meanwhile, some 5% of crop genetic diversity has already been lost, making our food system frighteningly fragile. Of course, we cannot talk about ending hunger without talking about climate justice. And we cannot talk about climate justice without protecting the smallholders farmers, especially women, who feed 70% of the world's population, but often remain the poorest and the most vulnerable. So beyond climate, there's also another silent threat, which are foodborne diseases. Foodborne diseases, and every year 600 million people fall ill from unsafe food and die. And out of that, about 420,000 die, and many of them, sadly, are children. And this is not merely about upset stomach, it is a global health burden that weakens economies and erodes human dignity. This is where science, particularly microbiology, becomes our ally. And through industrial microbiology, we can detect pathogens earlier, extend shelf life, and reduce waste. We're not just learning to use microbes as enemies, but as allies, those tiny powerhouses that can produce cleaner proteins, safer foods, and smarter agricultural inputs. We've discussed the challenges of foodborne diseases, and now we're going to move into industrial microbiology. And industrial microbiology is simply harnessing tiny organisms like those colorful colonies in the petri dish that you're looking at to make our food safer and more sustainable. And and this is an innovation to detect pathogens, to extend shelf life, to reduce waste, and even develop novel foods like alternative proteins. This field of industrial microbiology is very critical for global food security, and the possibilities, again, are endless. So looking at what do we do at the Grain Institute? Well, we see education as the most sustainable form of innovation. Our work, from youth training to professional fellowships, aims to raise future leaders in food systems, biotechnology, and sustainability. And every well-trained food scientist, every empowered farmer, every policy-aware student become a multiplier of change. One informed food inspector can, just one informed food inspector can prevent an outbreak. One educated farmer can restore soil health across communities. But what are some of the innovative technologies that are transforming our food system? Of course, these emerging technologies give us hope. So, for instance, we have precision agriculture, which uses AI and sensors to optimize water and fertilizers, cutting waste while increasing yields. We do have vertical farming that grows food with 95% less water and 99% less land, revolutionizing urban food access. And we have precision fermentation that allows to create animal identical proteins using microbes with 97% less land, 96% less water, and 85% fewer greenhouse emissions. And these are not just futuristic dreams, they're happening right now. Of course, we need to be careful in terms of if there's any, for a lack of better word, side effects of those technologies. But even at that, they owe the power to feed humanity sustainably. All right, now let's talk about resilience. With this kind of technologies, like you have your precision fermentation and so on and so forth, what this does is that it gives us climate resilient food systems. And climate resilient food systems are essential for global food security. First, we look at crop diversification, which means using adapted crops and diversifying staples to boost nutrition and resilience against changing weather patterns. And next, we also have water management, which focuses on maximizing efficiency with advanced irrigation like drip system and cultivating drought-resistant crops, saving precious resources. And third, we have the regenerative agriculture, which restores soil health, boosts biodiversity, and supports farmers' livelihoods by improving the land. And finally, we have integrated knowledge, which combines indigenous traditional wisdom with modern science. I think that's my favorite, to empower farmers with culturally relevant solutions. So these four pillars, crop diversification, water management, regenerative agriculture, and integrated knowledge, builds a sustainable food future. I'm gonna ask the audience, and please you can put that in the comment section or in the chat box. And the question is, which of these areas do you think holds the most promise? So which of these four areas holds the most promise? I'll give you a moment to think about that. Which of those four areas, that is it crop diversification, is it water management, is it regenerative agriculture, or is it integrated knowledge system? So yes, so please feel free to put it in the chat which of these areas, crop diversification, water management, regenerative agriculture, or integrated knowledge, which of them holds the most immediate promise. And you may also tell us why. Now, moving along, we have policies and governance, of course, that will support resilient food system or climate processes. Policies are the scaffolding that sustain every solution, and then strong frameworks and collaboration, of course, are crucial for sustainable food system. And what do we need? We need strategic investments that drives funds from harmful subsidies into sustainable farming. We need harmonized food standards to protect consumers across borders. We need equitable trade policies that uplift small farmers, small producers. And we need adaptive innovation that are ethical, that are inclusive, and they are globally accessible. And when women farmers have equal access to land and resources, youths rise by up to 20%, and empowering them when we empower those women, it's not strategy. It is not charity. When we empower those women, it is not charity. It is strategy. And that collaboration is very crucial for sustainable food system. Just looking at the statistics, when you talk about equity and when you talk about access, and I talked about including women, not just women, but smallholder farmers. And when smallholder farmers are included, then we can have a better, more sustainable food system. Smallholder farmers, for instance, produce 70% of global food. But yes, they lack the resources, they lack the tech, they lack the markets, and they also lack the climate support. Like I mentioned, women are 43% of the agricultural workforce. Yes, they face barriers, like I mentioned, land ownership and credit access. So we must prioritize, just reiterating what I've talked about, that we must prioritize smallholder farmers and women, and respect local knowledge and protect the vulnerable. If we can do that, then definitely we will see an increase in a better sustainable food system, one that is based on equity and inclusion for all stakeholders. Now, the global nutrition, let's talk about the global nutrition paradox. Food security needs more than calories, it needs nutrition. And we face a critical triple burden. And those triple burden, there are three things. The first one is the eating hunger. The second is the rising obesity. And the third one is the general malnutrition. With eating hunger, over 2 billion people lack essential micronutrients. With rising obesity, diet-related diseases now surge even in low-income countries. And malnutrition, there's the failure of food system to nourish, not just feed. Nutrition is not just about feeding, it's about the nourishment. How well balanced is the food? How well nourished is the food? And true food security must therefore go beyond calories. It must deliver nutrition, it must deliver safety, and ultimately it must deliver dignity. So no single sector can transform the food system alone. We have to look at cross-sector collaboration. Everybody is a stakeholder. We need the academia to advance research. We need the industry to scale innovation. We need governments to legislate ethically. And we need, of course, civil society to keep justice at the center. We need genuine collaborations, because genuine collaboration will be essential for complex challenges. When you unite diverse stakeholders like farmers, like women, like youth, then you can create a robust holistic solution. The youth can bring in, things like tech, using high precision technology. The women can bring in their indigenous knowledge, and so as even rural farmers. And lastly, when you accelerate innovation, it drives equitable and lasting impact. Now, we are in the decisive decade. 2030 is around the corner. From, immediate action is already needed. Everybody's talking about, the SDG goals should be achieved in 2030. It's just 5 years from now. So we are right now at the decisive decade. And I'm going to ask another question, which we're free to put in the comment section or in the chat box, is that what do we need to do between now and 2035? Because what we do now, between now and 2025, will determine the fate of our shared planet. So I ask you this question: what role will your discipline or your organization can play in feeding the future? So what role do you think you can play in your various communities, in your various organizations, that will be very essential for feeding the future? So as we draw closer to the end of this conversation, I want us to pause and reflect on one truth. The truth is that every single person in this room, in this symposium, has a role to play in transforming global food systems. Change does not begin in boardrooms. It does not just begin in symposiums or conferences alone. It begins with the 3 C's, what I would like to call the 3 C's. It begins with conviction, it begins with collaboration, and it begins with courage. And the future of food will be written by those who dare to act in these 4 ways. 1, pioneer research and innovation. We need thinkers and doers who will drive climate smart agriculture today, who will make knowledge open and accessible, and who will mentor the next generation of innovators. And as often as I tell my students, knowledge that remains locked in the lab cannot change the world. 2, we need champion industry leadership. The private sector must go beyond profit to purpose. It must invest in sustainable production. It must prioritize long-term well-being, and it must partner with smallholder farmers, the real custodian of food system. And sustainable business is no longer optional. It is the measure of credibility. And 3, we must advocate for progressive policies. Good policies are, again, like I mentioned, the scaffolding of sustainable change. And we must shape inclusive, evidence-based policy, invest in rural infrastructure, and ensure social protection for those most affected by climate shocks and inequality. Policy must serve people, not paperwork. And lastly, we must empower through advocacy. Advocacy is how you translate science into social change. Like we are currently doing at the Green Institute. So we need to cultivate public understanding, empower consumers, and amplify the voices of those at the front lines, the farmers, the youths, the women, and the innovators who feed us daily. So whether you're a scientist, whether you're a policymaker, whether you're an educator, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an activist, whether you're even a student, you are part of this story. And each of you carry the powers to make food systems fairer, safer, and more sustainable. So I hope that we make this our shared pledge today to pioneer, to champion, to advocate, and to empower, because we can turn the promise of food security into the practice of justice. And like the famous, like we usually say, with the officially green pledges, there's 7 of them. One of the pledges is said, the second pledge is, I will eat and drink moderately, because I know some people don't have access to food and water. And by taking this pledge, we're also covering food waste. We're ensuring that sustainability, that everybody is part of the history, regardless of your sector, your socio-economic background, or your even economical background. So before I close this conversation, I wanted to return to another story. A few months ago, students from one of our fellows from the Green Fellows program wrote to me, and he said, Before this fellowship, I thought food security was about famine. Now I know it's about justice. That simple sentence captures everything we gather here to do. Hunger is not inevitable. Food waste is not destiny. Climate despair is not the final chapter. If we choose empathy over apathy, collaboration over competition, and innovation guided by compassion, we can feed the world and heal the hurt. So I hope that today we can innovate boldly, we can educate wisely, and we can act courageously. And I hope that we can build food systems and that nourish both people and planet, and most importantly, that inspires generation to come. Thank you so much for your engagement. And if there are any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. So we're going to go into the Q&A session. After the Q&A session, we're going to take our first speaker of today, Dr. Nurul Awar Ahmad, who is a senior lecturer at the University Putra, Malaysia. So we'll do like a Q&A. If you have any questions, please feel free to put in your questions in the chat box. So I'm just going to read out some of the things that some of our participants are talking about. Some people said that they believe that regenerative agriculture should be prioritized. Some people believe that is integrated knowledge because it's very important to combine all aspects instead of working with one. Deborah Adeleke said she prefers regenerative agriculture because it helps us to have continued productivity by maintaining the soil health and biodiversity and the environment, such that there will be no negative effect on future generation in food production. And another question that I asked, and Prince Rutherford said that between now and in 2035, what it can do is to play a key role in advancing climate-smart agriculture, empowering farmers with data-driven practices, and promoting inclusive agricultural policies that enhance food security, resilience, and sustainability across communities. Priya Gosal said that she would like to contribute through awareness through education and impacting knowledge about the importance of taking balanced nutrition and sustainability of food by not wasting any food, by not throwing any food away. And instead, we can take our plates, we can put on our plates only the amounts we can eat. So think about health, safety, and taste. Thank you so much.